So to start things off, we're going to go over our agenda for the presentation. First, we're going to start with a project overview, talk a little bit about the stakeholders involved, about the problem that we're trying to solve, and the product that we're trying to design for it. We're going to talk about the requirements and the features. So we're going to talk a little bit about the requirements elicitation process that we began when we first started the project, as well as the features, sort of top-level business features that we sort of got from that process. We'll talk about the methodology that we chose to facilitate the project itself, and then we'll talk about technology, risk, and metrics that we've been using so far, as well as our plan to sort of amend those things as we go on to the second term. Then we'll head into design. We'll talk about the UI mock-ups that we have for what we want the system to look like, as well as an ERD diagram capturing a lot of the back-end database stuff that we have so far. Then we'll talk about basically our current estimation of where we are progress-wise, and then a couple of slides about our plan going forward. And then we'll try to round it out with a reflection at the end. So we talked about the people on the team, but when our project first began, we have 3 people, we have a few less, so we didn't just give everyone a hard role to start off. We all kind of had to do pieces here and there. So instead, we kind of just saw where our interests lied and kind of where we gravitated towards in the process, or in the project overall, so where we'd like to focus in on. So I focused more on process and documentation. Dennis handled more of the front-end design, doing UI mock-ups and object modeling. And Nicholas focused more on back-end design, so he worked more on ERD and sort of dealing with SQL. And this is sort of a template for us going forth. So the rest of the project and areas that we'll be focusing in on. And our coach is Professor Kaiser, who's been a really good help meeting with us every week and giving us feedback on deliverables and things like that. Our sponsor is Dr. Valino, representing the software engineering department at RIT. The problem that we are tackling here is the team rooms here. Right now we're getting a lot more people coming into the SE department, and as such, the team rooms that are used for students to do different kinds of projects are overflowing. Things like senior project have people meet weekly at the same time, tons of other projects for their classes. As the department grows, that's going to be a harder problem, and so they want a team room reservation system so that people can actually check on status of the rooms, figure out which ones they want, and so they can see before coming into the RIT campus whether or not they're going to be able to get a room. So when we first began, we started with requirement elicitation from our sponsor. We interviewed our sponsor generally weekly on Tuesday for about an hour each Tuesday. We were able to meet 7 times out of the 10 weeks based on a few scheduling conflicts. During these meetings, we recorded a lot of notes. And for the first few meetings, we recorded pretty much everything we heard, tried to take down as much notes as possible. And then after those first few, we compiled those notes into different documents so that we could then create questions based on what different things we might have felt were a little bit ambiguous, or certain questions that we had about the product itself. After that, we created use cases based on that requirement document so that we can sort of see our vision with the different kinds of users that we would think would be in the system and how they might interact with the system differently. From there, we got sponsor feedback to refine those use cases, and we ended up adding a lot more based on some things that we hadn't really thought about. And then at that point, we had more or less decided on our methodologies. We were able to create a feature list, sort of like top-level business features that we wanted to sort of hit on as the semester went on, as well as kind of how those things broke down. And from there, we also wanted to create some UI mock-ups early so that sort of our vision of how we wanted the system to look could line up with how the sponsor might have envisioned it. So some of the main features that we have in here is different kinds of permission classes, meaning different sort of users, and then their different permission levels. That's a big key piece of this, is that you're going to have students that are that's going to be our main use case. And they're going to have their basic functionality of being able to reserve rooms, cancel the rooms, check in and check out, those sort of things. But they're not going to be able to delete someone else's reservation, for example. So it's a different permission level than an admin or a faculty member would have. And that's something expressed in here. Our main use case, of course, is creating the reservations themselves. And we have a few different couple types. We have single reservations. That is going to be probably the most popular use case, as well as multi-room reservations for faculty. As far as like recurring reservations, so being able to take a certain room and reserve for multiple weeks in a row, or having a group of rooms that you're going to reserve for multiple weeks in a row. We're going to let the users, of course, cancel their reservations, check in and check out of the reservation, and that's a piece that we're trying to add so that reservations are tracked more smoothly. So that if people check out of the reservations, we can free up that time for someone else to get a reservation in. We want to use notifications for the users, so when they've finished creating a reservation, if for whatever reason they've been kicked out of the reservation, different notes then from the Labby or from whoever changed their status, as well as an expanded notification view for the Labbies, that they can see any notifications coming from the users and also the current state of all the reservation state of all the current team rooms. Then built on top of that is going to be some administrative tools for privileged users. Admins are going to be able to change the way the system works without having to delve into the code. So if they want to change permission levels for a certain user, or create another permission level if they find that we actually need a whole other set of permissions for this unknown user class that we're not thinking about at the moment, they can have the ability to do so.
Now, with these features all clearly defined for us and relatively unambiguous, we decided on a methodology, feature-driven development. This is for the sake of when we're developing, we can focus on one feature at a time, and then release that into our own and have release that into what we want. And it allows us to do plan by it, design it, and just build it in one entity without having to worry about outside interaction too much. And it allows us also to think at a more higher level to keep things simple for us to portray the idea to someone else, and also allows us to continually set milestones based on the feature instead of just setting a milestone based on time alone at least. This allows us to keep an agile flow of development as long as we focus on just using the features at hand, and also allowing us to quickly prototype individual features and get feedback from ourselves and also people that we plan on having testing in the future. Because of this methodology, we're going to be using it on the web. We're going to be using the web a lot. In fact, it's just going to be a web application. So obviously, our technology food shows were HTML, CSS for that. Can't really have anything else. We have, for the guts of it, the inner workings. You've got a lot of Node.js with a lot of plugins attached to it. This is so we'd only have to use JavaScript for pretty much everything. No need to add another language in there, like PHP or something. Keep things one language simple, and then for our back end on the database side, since SC's department mostly uses MySQL, we decided to also use MySQL for that to keep things aligned in that regard. Right now, since we haven't touched on development too much yet, we are going to be doing bug tracking, but we've yet to figure out what software we want to use and what other techniques we want to use for bug tracking. But we are thinking about it, and we'll get to it. And then our source control, right now we're going to be using Git, because we're all comfortable with Git, so it's just easy to keep that flow going. And then finally, Google Drive will be for our documentation. And it's cloud network. We can easily communicate between each other. We can look at the document at the same time. It gets information flowing fast, and it's easy to get to our sponsor and our advisor at the same time. Next, we've got some risks here, like our main ones that we had to deal with when we first started. Again, none of us had too much web development experience. So right now to mitigate that, we learned a little bit using different tutorials and other things, researching our technologies to get a better handle on what we needed to do to take care of our this risk. Next, we had some scheduling conflicts with individuals in our group and other members team members that we had to communicate with. This was mitigated somewhat with email, texting, because we all have each other's contacts, and this was just easily kept information flowing, but it was something that needed to be addressed early on, and we luckily took care of that. But right now, our biggest issue is that we're behind schedule. We haven't really touched development, but over the next 2 weeks, we're supposed to have off, essentially. We will be working on trying to get this going, so when the semester starts, the ball will be rolling. We also Our metrics are basically keeping track of our individual times, either through when we were learning technology, writing up documentation, designing our wireframes, or when we're taking care of database stuff. This is reflected in our 4-ups, which we do weekly 4-ups and show them to our faculty advisor on a pretty weekly basis of what we've done, what we will do, and also what we've encountered as a risk, and showing it to him and what we've done, what we could do to take care of it. It also obviously held our log times, like I said. But in the future, for the sake of when we start developing, we need to have a little more accurate time schedule. So our plan metrics will be doing a planned time and an actual time used to finish up tasks, and also basically giving each task that we want, each feature we want to have earned values, so we get a sense of progress both in like ourselves and just showing progress to others. And the advantage of using these is they work both well for development and also taking care of bugs as they arise.
Now we're going to get into the design aspect of our system. Here we have home screen. After a user is logged in, he or she will be able to see that home screen to the left. He or she will be having the option to click one of those 2 buttons. So the use case this time will be reserving a room. So if the user clicks the reserve, the next screen will pop up a calendar of the current month. So the user will be able to select a day that she or him will reserve a room. So let's say the user clicks the 22nd of April. So it'll pop up another screen where it'll list all the time available for that day. The icons to the left of the time is the availability of using the phone line or the webcam. The red indicates that it is not available, and the numbers next to the time is the availability, how many rooms there are in that time. So if it says 10, then all rooms are available at that time. So once a user clicks, let's say 10 to 11 a.m., it'll pop up into the next screen. It will display a drop-down where the user can reserve as an individual, a team member, or any other teams he or she will be assigned to. It also displays the option to reserve for a phone line or a webcam. So, but it defaults to none if the user does not require one. So after she clicks reserve, there will be a confirmation screen that she has been reserved. So another use case is when the user wants to find all the reservation that she reserved for. So she goes to the home screen, she clicks this search, it'll display a list of all the reservations she has made, or he made. So let's say the user clicks April 20th. It'll open up another screen. That's the confirmation screen she'll receive from the first use case. So she'll be able to look at which room she has been reserved to. If she wants to check in, check out, there's an option, or cancel his or her own reservation. So this use case is to alert the labby of any information. So the user clicks alert, another screen will be popped up, and next screen will be a free-form text field where the user can write any messages to labby. Now this screen is the admin home screen, where the admin can find or search all the reservations, inactive and active. The admin is also able to edit all the reservation has been listed. In this screen, where admin, after clicking a certain tab, the admin will go to the permission table where the admin can add, edit, or delete any permission.
Next we have the ERD, which is just basically, it's an ERD. So right now we have basic user info table, holds names and username. Username will be one of the very key primary keys throughout the entirety of the ERD in the database. To separate concerns and also keep things unique, we have a lot of separate tables to organize teams and guide them to a permissions table that will link like a unique permission back to that user to let, during using the app, that'll keep them from doing stuff that they're not allowed to do, or only allow them to do what they can do. The reservation table holds all the information necessary for a single reservation, including something that professors have access to, which is the multi-room ID, which goes to the multi-room table, which holds the basic information for when that window pops up for them to reserve multiple rooms. This multi-room ID is both for concurrent and recurring, and it's organized as a separate thing for, to keep it clean, and also so if the professor needs to edit what that does, they can easily just, it pulls that from the database, shows them the screen on what that is, and then they can change it.
Next up, we have the current status of our project. We have declared that it will be 80% that we have our requirements completed. We have project plan, the requirement documents, and many use cases. We declared that we have 50% design has been completed, prototypes that can be changed in the future, the UI mockup, the RIT that you just saw in the object model. And like we mentioned, we are behind in schedule for implementation, so we only have 5% completed. We do have the database set up, and we do have a basic formation or fundamentation on the skeleton code for our application. So our upcoming milestones is for the next 5 weeks, we are planning to get the basic minimal requirements and functionality on our application. We want to get our login to the SE using the SE authentication and our basic core for our reservation system. After those 5 weeks, we plan to have a new feature implemented after every 2 weeks. So now our test strategy is to get feedback and use the students on campus for testing purposes for our UI and our application, and we want to do load testing for our performance.
So to reflect a little bit on this, we realize that we are behind, but we do feel pretty confident with the work that we have put in and the planning that we've done so far, that we have covered a lot of bases, and we feel that with trying to work hard over the next 2 weeks, plus early on in the next semester, we think that we can catch up on implementation. Overall, we felt like we had a really effective team. We definitely were able to divide work up pretty well. We worked well together. We had pretty good communication throughout the term. So we think that is helpful for us. But we do feel that we could use better focus overall. Try to use communication better to help keep us all on track and on the same page. Meaning, reply to things faster and talk to our other sort of key players in this project faster, to get meetings turned around faster and that kind of thing. And we also think we should do a better job leveraging resources on campus. So, using the coach to help us vet certain documents, or using students on campus to help for usability testing. People that we know that would also then have a vested interest in the system working, being able to work with them to get some of this stuff tested. With that, we'll go to questions.
Yeah. So your mock-ups are all in a mobile environment?
Yes.
I don't recall you guys talking about this being a mobile app. Is that the intent?
So most users for RIT will be always on their mobile. There is a desktop version, but this is the primary case where the users reserve a room.
We felt that would be like, we kind of wanted to just focus on that sort of use case, like that's our main one. But yeah, there's also desktop, but we didn't want to put in too many UI mockups throughout the whole thing, so we just focused on one.
So since you have a skeleton code, do you also have a fully working tech stack, or is it just
It's working locally, but our main problem and the reason why we fall behind schedule is that we've had trouble translating that to our target environment. So originally when we had planned it out, we wanted week 9, like we knew we were going to be a little bit behind on implementation based on our smaller team and kind of how the stuff was going to work out. We were targeting more for around week 9 to week 10 to really have that sort of Hello World application going, and we didn't really hit it. So that's been that right there has been the main hang up. Yes.
How are you tracking your tasks? You're tracking time. How do you assign tasks on a weekly basis?
Well, the time that we do, like we kind of assigned each other. It's kind of it's not a direct thing, but we do assign time and assign like tasks of like who's handling what during our meetings, and usually we write that down and put it up in a document. Usually our 4-up is usually what it's tracked in. So like both what it is and how long it took.
So at a given time, you're only working on one feature, and everybody's working on their aspect of that feature.
Yeah, we have like a high level sort of feature by feature list that we're then breaking down into sort of subtasks that we can then give to people, and it sort of depends on which ones you can actually give to different people, but we sort of have those things broken down and we sort of deal with them when we're working.
Are you using the tools such as Trello?
Not at the moment. Right now we're just using Google Drive, but
Yeah, we're just wrapping things up there.
that has been discussed, and we may move over to one of those if we feel like that's going to do a better job sort of organizing our thoughts.
Sure.
I was just hoping you could elaborate a little bit more on the requirements on how your solution is fitting the need better than, say, a commercially available application, so Exchange. Could you elaborate on what the requirements were, or how your system's meeting them?
So I mean the problem at a base level is creating a reservation system for the SE rooms. It's pretty clear they wanted something built in-house that could work directly with their system, which might have been the reason why you'd want to just go to sort of students to develop it. But this gives them more sort of control over a lot of the features, and I think sort of like the administrative tools, like being able to create different user classes that are going to be very specific to RIT, and maybe how students or how sort of the faculty structure maybe is different. So I'm not sure if I'm answering quite right, but yeah, I think that those are kind of the things that might sort of be different developing in-house rather than going getting some other proprietary system to add in.
So I got a question. Feature-driven development. Why did you guys settle on that one as opposed to a different methodology?
We definitely discussed a lot of different options, and we kind of wanted to go with an agile methodology we had more experience with. I know I've had a lot of experience with Scrum, but we kind of felt like feature-driven development worked well with sort of the unambiguous requirements and feature set that we were developing for. Certainly Scrum can handle it, but we kind of like the ability of just being able to say, all right, we know that we want to make these 9 features, and we can break them up in this way, and we can sort of plan each one, develop it, test it. Like that sort of flow seemed to work well with feature-driven development. Feature-driven development, I think historically, it could be used for larger teams, but it can still sort of be fit around this. We feel.
So you're not concerned about breaking down each. So like based on your presentation, you guys have some key components like user authentication, the idea of scheduling the room, but you have 3 developers. How are you going to break those whole features down into tasks you can work in parallel and not encounter the integration nightmares that are bound to occur?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the feature. I think some work better than others because some are more simple where they can be implemented by one person with that time limit. I think other ones we might have to just like if someone has to get started on one part, then someone else has to get started on another feature for the next semester the next iteration. And I think that is okay as long as we make sure that we're still hitting the deadlines. I think as long as we're making sure that we're leveraging all 3 people based on the schedule, it's not too big of a deal if it sort of blends in a little bit.
Just a small little thing, unless your example was saying that there was always a key room reserved, we have 11 key rooms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's a typo. Maybe it was a typo from earlier on that we changed. Okay.
Yes.
With going for mobile, have you guys made any plans for being able to go between, say, not everybody even in the SE department has the same type of phone. There's Android, iOS, Windows. Have you made any idea of your plans on trying to manage to make it so that anyone in the SE department?
So our application is based on web. So it's not an application you download or install on your phone. So you just
Yeah,
go
just
to the
a web
website, yeah, and you can access it, desktop or mobile.
I mean, there's still some formatting issues for sure with different size phones, and a lot of phones at this point are pretty similar size, but we haven't really delved into sort of formatting the size differently on different phones quite yet. But I think that's something that we should be doing a better job looking into.
We need to finish?
He's been trying to raise his hand a few times.
Okay.
Okay.
Other people ask the questions I want to ask.
Okay.
Okay, let's thank the team.
We're Team For Your Health, and we did the day health planner. I'm Eric Marzak. I was in charge of the database.
And I'm Calvin. I'm a wave coordinator. My name is Peter Butler, and I was the Scrum Master. I'm Zachary Nielsen. I was the design coordinator.
I'm Dan Hoody. I was the customer representative and lead developer.
I am Karen Stapley, and I'm in charge of testing.
So for a sponsor overview, we had Trillium Health in downtown Rochester, and the person that represented them was AJ Blight out the back there. They provide a variety of local healthcare services, but the part of their business that we were catering to was their day health program. And they required a specialty tailored solution for that because they do food-based stuff that most electronic medical records don't cover. For a brief project overview and scope, the three major categories are the clinician portal, the database, and the sign-ins. And the clinician portal is mostly a copy of an electronic medical record type application with the addition of the ability to create classes and track them and create patients and all that other good stuff that they need to do. In addition, we identified the database as a major part of this because it is such a huge application that has a lot of data associated with it that will change a lot. And then on top of that, they wanted to be able to ensure that certain people were doing a certain session using some sort of biometric sign-in, and they settled on a fingerprint scanner.
I'd like to talk about our methodology for a little bit. Bit of a mix between waterfall and Scrum that evolved during our process, and that was because there was a lot of requirements gathering to be done at the beginning as well as design, and we actually added an infrastructure stage which here stands in for where we were setting up the repository and the server that we would be deploying stuff to test, as well as constructing the database. Once we got to the Scrum cycle, though, that was our main implementation stage, and it was there that we started working through the tasks that we had broken up our backlog into and got into much more of a traditional Scrum method of deliver and test, review, plan, and then develop. And eventually we were able to deploy. Requirements that were very important included handling multiple changing documents. This was a big one. They wanted a lot of flexibility as far as the documents were concerned, so being able to add new types of documents was a big deal for designing our database in a flexible way. Tracking of patient billing was very important to them. That was a big reason why this application existed. So it was important that we be able to tie patient attendance to their billing process. Maintaining patient care plans is another major thing that Trillium does, and care plans are a cumulative review of how the patient's doing within the day health program. So that was something that we had to get right. Maintaining statistical reports is another reason why our application existed, and that has to do with Trillium being able to review how the program is doing, such as how many people are enrolled, what's the status of those people enrolled, graduation rates, and that type of thing. Some non-functional requirements that sort of just come with a turf was HIPAA compliance, as this is a medical company, so they need to be compliant with HIPAA. And usability, we wanted the people in the office, regardless of their various walks of life, to be able to contribute to using this application, regardless of whether or not they have technical expertise.
So the technologies we chose to facilitate these requirements kind of changed a little bit from last semester. We basically ended up having to change just the back-end scripting language. We changed from Spring to Node.js because we had a hard time integrating Spring with our MS SQL database. So for our full tech stack now, we have AngularJS for the front end. We have Node.js for the back end, running an Express server, and then we connect with an SQL server for our database. Then for our development tools, since we changed from Spring to Node.js, we had to switch from Maven to NPM for our package manager. We moved from the SE department's Git to GitHub because it provided a lot of really nice features that we were kind of missing on that and made it a lot easier for us to develop. In addition, we have Karma, which we used for automating tests. And then the other technologies that we used are apiaries, so that we can keep track of the API and define that so that teams in the future can easily develop for this. Bootstrap, and then we used Yeoman for scaffolding our project. This is a brief overview of the design. We kind of clumped a bunch of stuff into just a couple boxes because there were just too many to put on there. So for the end user points of contact with this, we have our Angular web application, and then we have our fingerprint scanner application, which is run on a laptop. These communicate via HTTPS requests to our Express endpoints, which then delegate tasks to the controllers and the authentication. And then those controllers communicate with the models, which go through the DB connection wrapper to execute all queries. So the current state of our project as far as the features go, the things that we have done and are very confident with are documents, the patient care plan, and billing. And then we have accurate patient attendance under partial because we ended up having to actually subcontract out a fingerprint scanner application that was very poor quality, so it definitely does not meet all of the requirements that Trillium stated to us. And one thing that we really haven't gotten around to because of all the delays that we had with the fingerprint scanner is statistics.
Demo. Alright, this is my time to shine. It's going to be a little awkward, so bear with me. It's kind of at my back. I'm trying to sneak around to the side here. Okay. Alright. So this application ended up being quite large, almost enterprise level really. So we're going to sign in as an administrative user. So as we talked about, usability was definitely a key feature for us. We wanted this to be really easy for any average Joe to come in here and say, I want to do X with my patient, how do I do it? So we kind of have four major sections here. We have the patients, the classes, billing, and then templates. So we'll go into patients first. So you can see a couple demo patients that we have here. You can see their quick status, their date of birth, and then their Medicaid number. I'm going to Steve's. So Steve right now, so the care plan status will show up in the right-hand side. Steve does not currently have a care plan because he was just recently registered into the program. As we stated earlier, a care plan is basically an overview of how the patient's going through the program, kind of define set goals. They have to go through a set of assessments before they're actually able to generate this care plan. So we'll go ahead and add an assessment document here. So we're going to add a nutrition screen for our patient, Steve. On the right here, you can see the template that we laid out. I'll explain in a moment the difference between templates and documents. And over here are fields that will relate to the actual fields in the document. These will be used heavily in the future for statistics. You'll be able to look at all documents, look at everyone's average weight or weight of assessment, BMI. So we'll just do...
The reason that we have all these different fields and don't just, post the PDF of the patient and associated with them is because at Trillium they may want to run statistics on this at some point, or they'll want to just look at all the patient's data that they record in the patient view.
So when we check ready for review on this page, that means that the clinician who performed the assessment has said this is ready for the facilitator, the clinician who is presiding over this patient, to go in and create, or the document is ready for the comprehensive care plan. So we're going to check it, and you'll see that we'll get redirected to the patient page, and the nutrition screen is now ready for review. You can add as many assessments as you'd like, as many assessment templates. Each of them have to be marked as ready for review before the comprehensive care plan can be completed. And when we want to do the comprehensive care plan, the clinician is going to sign off, marking that they reviewed the document, so they know that it's actually up to date and it's prepared, and then they're allowed to approve the CCP. The comprehensive care plan is another template that we have within our system. It has a couple different fields here, and then you can actually upload a PDF. I have a PDF we can upload, but I can't get access to my documents. I'm just going to drag and drop the template. So the template's going to start out as hidden because the document can be generally quite long.
but you can review it there if you want. You don't have to fill these out if you don't want to. Now the patient currently has an active care plan. Trillium had a need so that the care plan needs to be reviewed every 90 days. This is configurable, so if they decide to change this in the future to every 120 days, however many days they want to do it, it will alert them as they get closer to this date by highlighting this box in yellow or red if they actually go past the due date. I'm going to discuss a little bit about the tabs here. So we have the care plan tab, which is, again, their comprehensive overview of what they're supposed to be accomplishing within the day health program. The basic information tab is essentially all of the information on a patient. There was a lot. I don't know, you guys know medical records. You have to fill out a lot in the paperwork. So this is basically just a tab for them to go if they want to see the person's name, some contact information, emergency contact stuff, anything you could possibly think of. And we also have the ability to import patient information. They can connect to the medical database at Trillium servers using a query that's specified by their IT team and pull in information from their medical database. We're not going to do that because we're not actually at Trillium, so it's not going to let us. So we're going to go into classes now. So this is the need for group meetings. Trillium Day Health Program provides a bunch of classes that patients are allowed to attend. So these are a couple of them. We'll go into the relaxation exercises. On the right, you're going to see a calendar that shows all of the sessions that have been held under that particular class. A session is basically just an instance of that class. So they can host it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever they want to do. We'll actually add a new section, or a new session. We'll call it yoga. You can add some notes for the session. You can define a facilitator. So this is a clinician, basically, who will be hosting the class. So I'll select myself here. Set a date. Say it was on Monday. Set the time. Read those. And then you can add patients to this session. So this ties in closely with billing. In order for a patient to be billable, they have to attend X amount of hours of sessions within any given day. And Zachary's going to actually demo the billing in a moment, so I'll add. You can add specific notes for the patient. Add one more patient here. And now we just created the session. We can go into our friend Steve here. Go down to his classes tab, and you'll see he now has attended yoga, and you can view all of his assessment or his session attendance information. Now and one more thing. So templates versus documents. This is kind of a confusing topic. So templates are basically an outline for what a document should be. Trillium had a lot of physical documents that they needed to store digitally, but they also wanted to keep digital records and review statistics across many of them. So we had to have the ability to find multiple different fields in the data types that they have within them so that you could actually do some meaningful statistic queries. So let's add in a different assessment that we have. We have a nursing assessment here. You can drop in the template file. Pops up to the right. The idea is here, for every single blank line you see, you would add a new field. So I'm not going to do all of them because that would take me forever. You get the idea. You can give it a name. And then this required for assessments, it actually should be renamed to required for care plan, means that this document needs to be filled out on a specific patient before they are allowed to have a care plan associated to them. All these assessments are required to be completed before they are actually able, all the clinicians are able to meet and design the comprehensive care plan. And then the association is it a patient document? So is this a document that is specifically for a patient? Or you can create a single care plan template. There can only be one care plan template. It's actually like a kind of a future goal is to have multiple different templates. But it was a little out of scope for us. Or you can have an other document if you just want to store non-specialized information. We allow that as well. But this is a patient document as it is a patient assessment, so we'll submit that. And now, if we go back into our patient Steve, you'll see that he has the nursing assessment added to his list of required documents, and he's also able to add the document from the patient page. Now we're going to show off our wonderful billing page.
So this is a core requirement from Trillium because they wanted an easy way for people in their accounting department and the clinicians to both work together on one web app so that they could more efficiently submit bills and review them and see why bills get rejected or what have you. So this defaults to the current week, which is how often Trillium reviews all of the billing. They review who's billable every week, and then they do a big report at the end of the month. So what we have here is that for every day, because Trillium does billing on a per day, per patient basis, they have the date of Monday, and then they have the patient, and then this is all the classes that they attended and the exact times that they were there for. In the future, this may be like 9:01 a.m. to like 10:59 because of when they signed in and out. But they have to be in classes for 3 hours to be billable. And that's right now. This could change in the future, so we unfortunately weren't able to automate that. And then any clinician can then change someone. For example, this person was only here for an hour, so we can mark them as not eligible. And now we'll open that back up because we want to add a comment and say he is not eligible because, you know, he only has an hour. And then every night, people are going to get updates on what the current status is of different people on the current week, so that people that are in the billing department can know that they have to go check out who is ready to bill and bill for them and whatnot.
So that's pretty much a brief overview of our system. There's a lot of nuances that we probably didn't touch on, but those were pretty much the primary architecturally significant requirements that we fulfilled. We'll go back to our presentation now. All right, future additions. So, future additions. So there were some things that we weren't able to get to. One of them being a feature-rich statistics suite. We decided to push off statistics because AJ, our wonderful sponsor, told us that right now the IT team is generally the ones who do the queries to generate statistics, and they are still able to do that with our implementation. So he said kind of push that off, focus on some of the more primary aspects of this big system. The ability to find different workflows for different patients, this kind of ties back into the idea that there can only be one care plan right now. In the future, there might be different departments within day health that require patients to be reviewed on a 30-day basis instead of the regular 90-day, but they still want the option of having both of those workflows run in parallel. Right now, there is only one workflow that we have integrated. A full-featured application for biometric sign-ins. As we said, our fingerprint scanner application is not great. We had to basically contract that out to a third party, and we learned how hard it was to actually give requirements. And then administrator panel, right now we do have the difference between an administrator and a basic user, but the administrator basically is presented with a different view, not a full-featured panel for them to kind of set up different options. There's a lot of flat file configuration options that an IT administrator would have to set prior to running the application.
So these next two slides will give us a really fast overview of how we gathered some of the metrics that told us how our process was performing. Here is the issues metric, and the big number here is issue lifespan. So what we did was we tracked the opening of each issue and then the closing of that issue and graphed the number of days that each issue was open. So you can see about 15 issues were open for a single day, 5 were open for 17, only one issue was open for 34 days, and so on. The big points are over here on the right. We have 70 issues in total. Majority were closed within 7 days. That means 50% were closed before the 7-day mark. 90% were closed within 17 days. So that gives us an idea of how responsive we were to bugs and issues that cropped up along the way. Another metric that we measured was time. So the big thing here is hours per week, and this let us examine, how many hours were being spent per story point, how many hours were being spent per feature and per person. You can see there is quite a bit of a jump near the end. You could call that crunch time.
And also clearly, we could probably mark right on here. This is when we decided to drop spring and go into node. Big spike there.
So for testing, due to the technology switchover that we did in the middle, we didn't really have a lot of time available for writing a ton of unit tests because we, quite frankly, needed our people developing features. So we did build up a skeleton framework for doing unit tests. We have a few of them completed, but we focused more so on just usability testing. We have an extensive number of user tests that basically cover the entire scope of the clinician portal that we just showed you, as well as making sure that we matched up with our use cases that were requested for being able to bring that over.
So roadblocks. We discussed that we had some pretty significant roadblocks. Switching the technology stack with 10 weeks left was a nightmare. Don't do it. If you can avoid it at all possible costs, we had to just because of it just took us too long. Switching the database engine was also a problem. Because it took us so long to connect MS SQL to pretty much any backend, we decided to develop with a MySQL backend and then switch over to MS SQL. That was a good 40-hour work week in order to change all those SQL queries over, and Zachary was able to actually build a really good framework for prepared statements. And then the poor quality of the fingerprint scanner was a big roadblock that we really couldn't overcome. There wasn't much we could do about that. Once they said we can't build anything more, we kind of had to stop and say, well, this is the best we've got. And yeah, those were the major roadblocks.
So in retrospective, we definitely would have cut down the initial scope. We felt that our clinician portal, if we had only had that, probably would have been enough scope, and that we could have really made that a really outstanding application versus an application that performs. We also probably could have written a lot of unit tests. Also, the age-old adage of more developers does not mean that you can develop more. We definitely had probably enough people for the project, but it was definitely the largest team that I've ever had at RIT. Picking the language based on everyone's comfort isn't great. That's why we picked Java to start with, when really having someone who's more of an expert in any language would have been much greater help. Outsourcing is a nightmare. It was very difficult even after we got the application to figure out what needed to be changed and how they could change it. And getting a working full stack way earlier would have definitely helped us avoid a lot of these issues.
Any questions, guys? Go ahead, Rajas.
I really like the overall look of the system. I was wondering how you guys approach usability testing. Like, did you work with employees to test it? Do you have like questionnaires? How do you guys?
Zach actually was the guy who designed the main workflow, and I think it was mainly how many different windows would they have to go through to accomplish a task. So we sat there and said, like, what would a clinician want to see? And we kind of narrowed it down to 4 major things. And that was pretty much our definition. And
We
Zach, maybe
didn't really have all that much time to do usability testing because with the switchover, but our project sponsor was really, really good about really drilling into us that it needed to be as few button clicks as possible and as short as possible.
Yeah, AJ was very good about button clicks need to go down. That was the main driving numerical way.
Because I don't know if you
We
know
also
this,
had
but people in the healthcare industry will count the number of clicks that it takes them. Nothing else matters to them.
We also needed to be able to fix anything, so ease of being able to back out of anything that you've done is important. Like the simplicity that you learn about.
You said you switched from the SC department's Git server to GitHub. What tools or capabilities does GitHub provide that you need?
Providing the desktop GUI was much easier for our team to see what was done, what needed to be done, as well as use Git as opposed to on the command line. In addition, we made really good use of the GitHub issue tracker That was really easy, and it was also like it's very satisfying when you're making a commit to close an issue with the commit instead of having something on a backlog and then committing the code and then forgetting to do it and then closing it afterwards. And you can also track exactly where in the code that issue was closed.
Gives some pretty good metrics as well. They have a whole graph section. Gives cool charts.
And the ability to let all of us push to the repo.
That's true. We did struggle a bit with the SE Git. I think frustration kind of led to the switch over.
I would have a question, man. What would you do differently about fingerprint scanner if you had another chance?
Say no. Like hands down. When we researched it, originally we had purchased a fingerprint scanner with the promise that it was going to come with an SDK, and we got the fingerprint scanner. And I was attempting to contact the people who sold it to us in order to get the SDK. I think about 2 weeks went by with no response, and we said, we can't do this anymore. I looked for alternatives. I ended up calling around, and 360 Biometrics said, our application can probably do what you needed to do. Give us your requirements. We'll give you a number. And then when we told that to AJ, he was like, yeah, that sounds good. Have someone who already built their system do it for us. And at that point, we were kind of more overjoyed with the fact that we found something that would work. And if we had to go with outsourcing it again, I would absolutely make sure that I had more visibility on my end. I didn't really know what their thought process was on the workflow that I wanted until it was pretty much too late, and we ran out of money and budget for them to make the changes necessary. But the key answer to your question is no. We would have said no.
What software did you track? What software did you use to track your issue?
The GitHub issue tracker.
Amazing. Would recommend.
Any other questions?
That's it.
How satisfied is the customer, like, overall application?
I think.
Yeah. Well, we also have our customer, in addition to our project sponsor, is the manager, the person who runs Day Health. And when we first showed it to her back when it had a lot of bugs, I think like 3 weeks ago, she was actually pretty excited for it and thought that it would make their lives a lot easier. So we knew right then that at least besides the fingerprint scanner that we were solving a major headache for them.
Do you know anything about plans to have it see production?
Yeah, that's something that AJ has been working with us closely. He's hoping to kind of distribute this to other healthcare networks in the future at some point. It's got a little bit of work before that, but we're working on really hashing out the future goals and what's actually doable in the system.
If I can add to that, we are making sure that we really make a plethora of documentation because they're actually considering making the next iteration of this a possible additional senior project.
And there's a lot.
You'll be getting a big DVD or a big USB.
Oh yeah. Whole 64 gigs filled. 64 gigs filled. No, it's definitely not. Don't grade us on that metric, please.
Okay, let's thank the team.